Drive Home Reviews podcast, where I review the movies that I have just seen while I speed, hell-bent for leather, down the road, bobbing recklessly in and out of traffic, a horde of police at my back, chasing after me upon the completion of a really awesome heist. I plow recklessly through residential neighborhoods, crashing through stop signs with little regard for property or personal damage. Ha 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 ha.
Get out of my way, you stupid people! You think you're on a sidewalk? Red!
No, I'm actually just going down the regular route. But that sounds like what I should be doing in reviewing one of these Drive movies. I don't really know what else to call them, but it does seem like they've created their own little subsection of the action genre. You know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a Drive movie. You know, something like, Drive or Baby Driver. Usually it has Drive in the title. But not always. The Fast and the Furious franchise is the thing that really kicked this thing off, even though it's been around for a really long time. And generally speaking, I find these films to be, at best, okay. They're very stylized, and they kind of have this weird amalgamation of glitzy and grungy. Like, it's an aesthetic that I can't really describe. I don't know if there is a term for it. But I think if you've seen any of the movies like that, you kind of know what I'm getting at. And into this genre comes this entrant, Eenie Meanie, which you probably haven't heard of yet because it's another direct-to-Hulu release, starring Samara Weaving, who is the reason basically I watched this, because I really liked her in Ready or Not. And she's one of those actors that when I see that she's in something, I'm like, okay, I'm going to give that a shot just to see how she does. Because, when you see something like Ready or Not, which is not in a genre I normally patron, but leaves such an impression, a lot of that due to its lead actor, you start to wonder, was it the movie or was it the actor? Was there a combination? And you kind of want to see what she does next. And so far, I haven't been disappointed, except I think she was in that Bill and Ted abomination that came out in 2020, but nobody came out looking good in that, so I don't blame her. Anyway, so this is a fascinating creature, because on the surface it looks like it's just going to be another one of these types of movies. Now, I have said this in a number of reviews. It's one of the things that I truly believe, as a fan of movies, a writer of stories, as a creative individual, and I don't think I'm being egotistical saying that. But I say it a lot in these reviews that cliche, audience shorthand, stock characters, stock plots, that these are not bad things in and of themselves, especially if they allow you to cut to the quick, and then you can do something more interesting with your movie, using this as the basis to kind of get into it. I've said that a lot in criticism of films, but it's been a while since I've been able to use that as a jumping off point for my praise of a movie. Because, as stated, on the surface, this looks to be just another in that Baby Driver, Drive, Fast and Furious kind of mold. But it actually is using that as a template to deliver a pretty interesting story on the topic of toxic relationships. I know that sounds incredibly pompous, but it's true that I'm pompous. It's very true. No, it is true, but but it's also true in regards to this movie. So let's break it down. Before we go any further, I want to make it clear, I'm going to avoid as best I can plot spoilers. Not that there's a lot to spoil, but I think seeing the character's arc and journey is something you deserve to see fresh. That being said, this is a movie that when talking about it, you kind of have to talk about the entirety of the film, important plot points, and I guess what might be considered spoilers included, in order to kind of get the whole picture. So, long story short, I'm putting up the spoiler alert warning just to cover my bases.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. It's spoiler alert!
No. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Maybe say spoiler before you give away the end of a movie, okay?
So our movie is about our main driver, Eenie, who got the nickname Eenie Meanie. Yes. Who is played by Samara Weaving, who is like the best, getaway driver in the world. She had a rough childhood. She had parents who were not on their game. She got bounced around and fought. You know the character type. And of course, she fell in with criminals and became just the very best getaway driver. She's like a legend, but all of this before the tender age of 22. Now, she is attempting to go straight. Again, you can kind of see where this is going if you've seen a movie before. You understand most likely that she is somehow going to get pulled back into the world of high-stakes heists. And indeed she does, when she finds out that she is pregnant. And the father is her longtime screw-up criminal boyfriend, whom, as she goes to tell him about this, she finds, of course, he is balls deep in all sorts of trouble, and of course, because it's one of these movies, the only way to get him out of it is for her to go on one more job, and, wackiness ensues. So, as I've said, this movie, despite its very, very simple setup, actually has a lot more going on in it, and that's because it focuses its attention on our main relationship, and that is the relationship between Samara Weaving and her boyfriend, played by Carl Glasman. And let's be very clear about this. Let's make sure that there is absolutely no room for interpretation. I speak not of the actor. I'm sure Carl Glasman is a perfectly lovely gentleman, good to his mother, gives to charities, pets puppies, and the like. So this is not to say anything or make any assumptions about him as a human being, but it is to say that the character he plays, Eenie Meanie's longtime boyfriend, is, without question, a complete bellend. This guy is the king of douchebag mountain. He gives Kevin Federline vibes. Does anybody remember him? It's good that you don't, but if you know what I'm talking about, you know the kind of self-important douche that was very prevalent in the early to mid 2000s, and who still infect our world today. The closest film correspondent I can find, equivalent is what I meant to say, not correspondent, but the closest equivalent I can find, I'm going deep here into the bad movie well, did anybody see that Mariah Carey abomination, Glitter? Of course you didn't, because you're a person. But for those who did, you might remember her love interest, Dice. This scumbag movie or music producer that from the beginning you look at him and you go, ew, no, God, no. And yet he is our main love interest for the movie. But that is this guy. Every fucking moment he is on screen, I want to punch him in his face. I hated this character. Absolutely despised him in a way I haven't felt towards a movie character in quite some time.
But I must remain impartial and continue to study even as he mocks everything I hold dear. I hate him.
My anger towards this character is increased because, one, he is a complete idiot and a complete fuck up, but one of these people who doesn't ever feel like he's done anything wrong and can't understand why Eenie doesn't want to be anywhere near him. He literally fucks up everything. And what's worse is that we're told and we see that for reasons that are explained to us but we don't really see, Eenie is still completely dedicated to him. She's trying not to be, but she's trying to get her life together and she's trying to leave the dark life behind her and better herself, but he just is incapable of maturing and taking responsibility for his actions. And yet he keeps pulling her back and she keeps going back to him. And I think we've all known someone like that, if not been that person who has been in a relationship that everyone around us can see is bad for us. I've known a couple people like that who you look at them and you're like, you are a wonderful human being, but this person you've chosen is just the absolute fucking worst, and you don't understand what they see in this human being. But you respect them for the fact that they see it, and you always think, love is blind, and maybe this person is different when they're not around me. I don't know. But you just know in your heart of hearts that this person is no good, but, the other party just can't seem to get away from them. And that is the embodiment of Carl Glasman's character in this. And this was infuriating me throughout the entire fucking movie. And I began to hate this movie. And I especially hated it when at a crisis moment, when they, you know the pattern that a movie like this is going to have when there are estranged lovers and one is trying to get their life together and the other's still in whatever, illegal game they're in, and they have a heart-to-heart, and the person who tried to get out of the life realizes that they were wrong for trying to leave. This is who they really are, and all of that nonsense, and they end up getting sucked back in. And they do that. And during that scene, Carl Glasman, gives her this line of like, you could have stayed and we could have gone through this together, and but you wanted me to change who I was for all my life, and you weren't giving me time to do it, and you could have stayed and helped me through, and blah. And she falls for it. She fucking falls for it. And you're just like, everything from the way this guy dresses to the way he looks to the way he's acted in every fucking scene we see him in says that he is a scumbag, and an unapologetic scumbag at that. And you're falling for this. We see a couple of instances where we see that he has a better nature, that he is good with kids and whatnot. But it's a small thing. It's a small moment, and then it's right back to just being the douchiest of douches. And your fury with this movie is just building and building, and then, I'm not going to give away exactly what happens, but then it happens. It happens, and the movie reveals what it was actually doing this entire time. And that was, it wanted us to hate this character. As I said at the beginning, this is a movie about toxic relationships, about emotional manipulation, and about how even the strongest among us, especially a character like Samara Weaving is playing, who has been deprived of love and real connection for most of her life. Everybody just basically used her or liked their booze and bills more than her. You know, she even says it during that aforementioned scene that nobody changed for me. You know, nobody, you know, how many times did her douchey boyfriend get sent to rehab because the judge told him to, and how many times did you go to try to make yourself better for her? Which he then turns back around on her as a manipulation tactic, saying, oh, you want me to change, you want to change me. But what this movie is actually doing is it is showing us exactly who her boyfriend is and what he represents. And yes, there are good elements to him, and he did do some good things for her. So you can understand where that loyalty and dedication is coming from, but we also see that every other thing is screaming that this person is not good for you and not good for the continued existence of you, your future, or your child. And when the eventual switch gets flipped and we come to understand that's what was going on here all along, it's one of those movies that now you kind of want to go back and rewatch and go, oh my God, yeah. Now you see it. It wasn't just that I was getting mad at this character, it's that I was supposed to hate this character. You weren't supposed to want them to get back together and go riding off into the sunset like some modern day Bonnie and Clyde, because Bonnie and Clyde died in a hail of bullets. You want her to get out and make that realization that yes, you can still love somebody, they can still have had positive influences and impacts on your life, but at the end of the day, they were toxic and you have to cut them out for your continued survival, or else the cycle is just going to continue. So, right there, playing the long con with us sets this movie above so many others of its ilk. You know, Phil, like, I'm being a little mean here and a little dismissive, and I'm not trying to say if you like these movies that there's something wrong, but you know, the Fast and the Furious movies are fun popcorn, you know, turn off your brain kind of movies, but they always want you to think that they're about more, you know, with their constant rambling of the word family and everything's about family, and here we go with family. There's a difference between saying you're about something and actually being about it and actually sticking the landing, which I feel this movie does. And I have to applaud it. And when you realize what the movie is doing, it makes, like, the brilliance of everybody involved just come out even more. Like I said, and I gotta give all props to Carl Glusman in this, for playing this absolute jackass, this unlikable piece of shit, and doing it so well, and matching it up with similar characters in similar films, the ones that, you know, we hate but we kind of like because they're just so lovable. it's a balancing act that he has to walk between, yeah, showing that this guy does have good qualities, but they are always going to take a back seat to his impulses. And this is a character that always is going to take the easy way out and not think anything through, and doesn't want to actually do the hard work that it takes to change. This is not someone who we want Samara Weaving to end up with, because she is actually willing to do that. And in lesser movies, they would end up together, basically saying that all of that attempts to be a better person were stupid, and you shouldn't go against your nature, and fuck the system, and all of these, very adolescent mindsets that some of these films deal in. And special props. I gotta go special props for Samara Weaving, who, as I said, that she's the reason I watched this movie. And boy, is she showing off her acting chops here. This character has so much going on. So many conflicting emotions and so many forces pulling her in all of these different directions. Like I say, it's a daily struggle. We see that. This is a fun thing. I like the juxtaposition, and they do this in other movies, but again, here it adds another layer to the themes, that she's so good at planning heists, and she's so good at, driving and not panicking, but she has trouble balancing a normal life, getting to work on time, studying and getting to a test on time. But she is fighting to do it because she knows that it's what's best in comparison to the life she was leading. And she does all this in the guise of just one of these sarcastic tough girls that we see in so many of these movies. Now, again, I don't know what order some of these reviews are going to drop in. So if this one happens to come out prior to my review of My Oxford Year, little preview of that. If that one comes out first, then I'm just reiterating what I've already said. But I mentioned in the tail end of that review that one of the issues I find with a lot of films that are trying to write more well-rounded female characters is that they tend to sometimes think that weakness makes your character weak, that you want to present a good role model, for lack of better terminology, so badly that you're scared to give her real flaws that either need to be acknowledged as flaws or overcome. This film is the perfect illustration of how to do that right. This character is very good at what she does. She's confident, she's funny, she can handle herself, she doesn't need anybody to rescue her. She's a badass, and knows she's a badass, but she has relatable, understandable character flaws that she has to overcome. And a lot of this is shown in her facial expression, the way she reacts to different characters. I'm not saying this is an Oscar-worthy performance, but I am saying that in the hands of a less skilled actor, in both cases, I have to give them both their credit here. In hands of less skilled actors, this movie would have just been another driving film, another, Grand Theft autoerotic asphyxiation kind of movie. And because these actors are putting in the work, it elevates it. It's a much better film than any of those other ones that I've named, in my opinion. And on top of that, it's just the fun parts of the movie are fun. The action scenes, the driving scenes are really well done. I like that in planning the heist, they actually address the concept of running out of gas. you know, because I always wonder that in some of these movies, like, eventually that car is going to run out of gas, right? You know, so they actually addressed that here, and I'm happy they took that little nitpick and, you know, actually made it part of the narrative. It's got a really fun cast who are all just little tweaks on the normal character. Andy Garcia is in this playing the crime boss, and he is really good, and I love he has this wonderful back and forth with his assistant. You know, they just have that they're talking very casually about everyday things, and then they're kind of like, oh yeah, go steal $3 million. Again, a character that we've seen in a lot of these movies, but I like that it's a more human portrayal, you know. Likewise, Steve Zahn is here for kind of a thankless cameo as Enie's father. Another embodiment of how nobody changed for her, and her kind of why she would kind of veer towards the person the only person that has kind of ever shown her any kind of affection. So at first he feels like he's kind of superfluous and not needed. But again, when you look at the larger picture, you see why that character was included. Jermaine Faulkner plays, they have a name for him, and I can't remember, but he plays like the guy in charge of the heist. He's really good. He and Samara Weaving have a really good back and forth during one scene. You know who else is in this who makes a fun impact? Marshawn Lynch, who plays a rival driver who shows up to kind of be that monkey wrench in the plan. We all know that any heist movie, the plan is going to go sideways at some point. So he is that complication. And he's fun in this. It's interesting because, you know, the last time I saw Marshawn Lynch in a movie, it was in that Love Hurts film earlier in the year, and he was fun in that too. I think he's really enjoying, you know, playing these really big, crazy characters in these over-the-top action movies. Hey, find your niche, buddy. Find your niche and go with it. More power to you. You were enjoyable here, Beast Mode. I want to be careful that I'm not overselling this. This is not the perfect movie. This is not a great movie. It's a movie that I respect because it's better than it had any right to be, and better than it led me to believe it was. There's more going on here than just your typical driving heist movie. And I respect that. That all being said, I have to ask myself the question of, would I actually recommend it, or would I go back and watch it again? And the answer is I don't know, but I feel like I'm leaning a little bit towards nah. You know, not in I never want to see this movie for the rest of my life, you know, kind of way like I do with some films, but in a kind of, I saw it, it's there, and I don't really have much more to say on the subject. So I'm not sure why that is. Like, it's almost like, in an odd Catch-22 snake eating its tail kind of thing, it's almost like I want to rewatch it to figure out why I don't think I want to rewatch it. Because I would think that knowing what the film was about would actually make me appreciate it more upon a second viewing. Because I could waste less time hating the King of Douchebag Mountain there and actually enjoy the movie knowing what the full arc is going to be. So, I don't know. For some reason, I'm still kind of lukewarm on it as a whole. And I'm not sure why that is. That's the danger in doing a film review in this format, because, you know, sometimes you can take some time and really reflect on a movie. I find this a lot when I do the top 10s at the end of the year. that, given time to reflect, I can kind of either pinpoint why something worked or maybe pinpoint why something didn't work for me. But right off the cuff, sometimes it's a little harder. So, I don't know. Let's put it this way. I don't know if I would recommend this movie, but I'm also not going to recommend that you avoid it at all costs. I think it's worth watching if you feel like watching it. I don't know if that's helpful at all. So yeah, I'm stalling a little bit here because I know I have to get to the final grade. And I'm stalling because I'm not quite sure what I want to give it. And so let's talk about the final grade. I'm teetering between a C+ and a B-. The C+ is because I, again, just don't know if I would watch this movie again or if I'd recommend it. But the B+ is in recognition of how it was a much smarter movie than it originally showed. And the acting across the board, but especially of our two leads, is top-notch to pull off this deception. So I kind of want to be charitable and go with the B-, but I think I'm going to go with my gut, and I'm going to give this one a C+. I feel a little bad about that, but at the same time, I feel like I was being disingenuous if I went higher. So, yeah, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. So, I'm going to say a C+ for now on this one. Not terrible, smarter than you would think, but still something's holding me back. Not sure what it is. It can't possibly be the safety belt because nobody in this movie wears them. That's the thing that always gets me about these movies, about drivers, that you very rarely see any of them put their seatbelt on. I know it's a stupid thing, but, anyway. So yeah, I think that's about all I've got to say, really, about Eenie Meanie. So, alrighty. So let's wrap this up. So thank you for coming with me. Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining me. And as always, for the love of God, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.